Do glaives still have a place in the PvE sandbox? I think they do, and I'll do my best to make an argument for them in this video. But I am aware most probably don't really share this viewpoint, or just don't really know what to look for in what makes a glaive good, alongside the best build options to use them to really make them shine. What you're looking for is ways to make the melee attack as potent as possible, and the 20% buff this got recently goes a long way in making glaives worth it. This melee is classed as a kinetic uncharged melee, so some options buff it while others do not. Those which do buff it include synthoceps, which are now available on all prismatic classes as part of the exotic class item. And for more class specific specialised options, for titans you have the wormgod Caress, hunters Triton Vice, and warlocks Winter's Guile. Prismatic is also a really nice place to start with glaives, due to a few fragments which synergise incredibly well. Facet of Blessing will trigger health regeneration on every glaive melee kill, while Facet of Grace will activate on melee kills too, as their class is kinetic, granting simultaneous light and dark transcendence energy. For traits on the glaive itself, Close to Melee is the premium choice in increasing melee damage. It provides a 30% increase for 10 seconds upon scoring a projectile kill, but will be refreshed back up to 10 seconds with each subsequent melee or projectile hit, making it incredibly easy to maintain. And why I suggest Close to Melee so much is because a lot of the more traditional damage perks, or even some utility ones, are kind of misleading on glaives. Options such as Vorpal Weapon, Frenzy or Adrenaline Junkie will only increase projectile damage, though I'll recommend against these. Same with options such as Demolitionist and Chain Reaction, where their effect will only activate on projectile final blows. The projectile damage, to be fair, is fine, but it's not really amazing. If you would prefer just to have a ranged special weapon, I'd much rather go with something like a fusion rifle or sniper. Ideally the projectile will just be used should you need to activate something such as Close to Melee, or if you require shield energy in dangerous situations. Thankfully though, Close to Melee can be found on a selection of glaives, including the new forthcoming Deliverance Salvation's Edge glaive, which I believe to be the best so far. This glaive alongside Greasy Luck are the only glaives which can get the column 3 trait Disruption Break. Again, since its melee is classed as kinetic, its damage will be increased by this by a huge 50%, meaning that against major enemies with elemental overshields, glaives can take them out quickly should you pop the shield with a projectile hit first. If you want my recommendation for a perfect glaive which is also craftable, here it is. Rapid fire frames are nice to have too. They benefit from higher base handling and reload, as well as more reserves. And the melee damage is the same across the board for any glaive archetype, so it's not even like you're losing out on anything here either. Just looking at the whole archetype from a more top down level, here's just the pros and cons in running glaives. The pros are, despite being a special weapon, they have functionally unlimited ammo, or I guess melees. You can clear out groups of enemies easily without expending anything, and this melee is easily boosted. It's pretty decent at base, but you do want more than that. Even something as simple as Spirit of Synthoceps will grant 100% increased damage passively, and it can go up to much more with something like Wormgods at 200%. This low ammo requirement means you can run double special easily, with the other option being ideally something for single target damage like a sniper. But on that note, glaives actually do have respectable single target damage, when simply just holding down melee. I was able to hit 2.5 million on Greg with Synthoceps and Close to Melee, but survivability is tough in these situations, so also opted for a long cast of Song of Flame to keep damage resist high. There's also the shield aspect, which I wouldn't really recommend building into, but that's just because it's not really needed that frequently. But when it is, it's appreciated when the right moment arrives. If you need to revive a teammate, or you've gone just a little bit too deep, it can clutch out a tough situation. The main con is not something you might think of at first, but does become quite apparent if using glaives as your main weapon: the inability to generate orbs of power with melees. There are workarounds to this, such as using Reaper or Firepower, but unfortunately heavy-handed will not function as the glaive melee is not classed as a powered melee. There is also no champion support available for glaives, and very limited perks which can stun champions with elemental effects. Finally, exotic glaives, actually quite underrated for the most part. Excalibur has the ability to generate a void overshield while holding block, and melee kills will refresh the shield, helping out a weak spot of glaives being survivability. Excalibur also has a Close to Melee type perk, where melee damage is increased by 20% whilst you have a void overshield. Winter's Bite is really strong, but kind of has to be to warrant giving up the heavy slot. The ability to slow and freeze of its melee attacks deals with overloads and unstoppable champions. It also adds extra damage, and especially so due to the fact that melees deal additional damage to frozen targets, on top of that caused by the shatter. It also has the easiest melee damage increase of all glaives, at a huge 50% boost for simply having any ammo in the mag. If you do want to use a glaive for single target damage, the Winter Bite is also pretty good, coming in at 2.8 million in the same damage scenario against Greg. The class specific glaives are all niche, but of course that means they have situations where they really shine. The Titan glaive is mainly used for min-maxing damage, as anyone who passes through the bubble it creates is granted a stacking 5% weapon damage bonus. The Hunter glaive is an absolute menace in PvP and Gambit if you can get its ult fire charged. This tracking lightning attack will one-shot guardians reliably and is really easy to use. The Warlock glaive, while probably not used quite as much, has some nice solar class synergy. As it provides cure and restoration, this will activate fragments such as Ember of Benevolence. Also, when using Touch of Flame, the cure and restoration effects are both increased to ×2. So overall glaives, they're definitely worth it if you just want a fun aggressive playstyle, which can do quite well in a whole bunch of content, and do really well in any prismatic build, especially if using Spirit of Synthoceps. Thank you for watching.